Hello, my name is Charlie Sinclair and I'm the founder of Resultsware Limited, and I'm going to talk to you about some of the techniques I've learned over the years or decades working in the time and task management arena. I'm going to use our task line add-in for Microsoft Outlook to help me with my presentation. So, how do we get started with time and task management? Well, as we all know, the first thing is to make a list of all the things we need to do and write them down. I won't elaborate on this. However, I will point out that just creating a to-do list isn't enough. We need to take our list and turn it into a clear plan for getting it done. And how do we do that? Well, there are two main steps. Firstly, we estimate how long we think each task will take, and we'll come back to that shortly. Secondly, we put the list into priority order. Putting the list into priority order stops repeated procrastination later when we need to decide what to do next. Also, it makes us think about what our priorities are. Otherwise, we tend to do the stuff we enjoy doing rather than the things that are important. And I'm more guilty than most people on that one, I have to admit. Okay, let's go back to estimating task duration, which can be tricky. My main recommendation is that tasks should be short in duration, ideally a few hours or less, and certainly no more than a few days. Splitting your work up into short tasks has two main advantages. It increases the accuracy of your work schedule, since the shorter a task is, the more accurate your time estimate will generally be. Let's say I'm cooking dinner. If I've made the dish before, I can use past experience to estimate future timescales. But if it's something new to me, it's more difficult. But short tasks help. I might not know how long it will take to make the whole recipe, but I do know that it will take around 15 minutes to chop the onion, fry them, 5 minutes to grate the carrots, and so on. Basically, it's easier to estimate the duration of shorter tasks. It also makes it easier to know whether you're on schedule, since you'll know which tasks should have been completed by now. For example, if you're partway through a 10-day task, it's difficult to know whether you're on schedule, because you might only have subjective means of measuring your progress. But if you had split the main task up into 10 one-day tasks, and you've completed the first 4 tasks, in this latter case, you'll know that you're pretty much 40% of the way through. Right, so now we have a list of tasks, the length of each task, and we've put the list into priority order. So now we have all the information we need to schedule the list using time blocking, or in other words, create a plan for getting our stuff done. So what is time blocking? It's allocating tasks to available time slots on your calendar to create a plan. You can do this by hand, or you can get a tool to do it for you. For example, here I've automatically created a time block schedule in Microsoft Outlook using Taskline, which is a well-established auto scheduler fully integrated into Microsoft Outlook. Taskline has been around since 2002, so we pretty much know what we're doing by now, and we're on the 5th major update. This schedule is a reflection of my working hours. I get in a bit later on Monday, and Friday I like to work late because most people go home early and the office is nice and quiet. Here is the task list. The system has taken this task list and automatically created the time block schedule for you. Time blocking has many advantages. You now have focus. Monday morning, I'm going to write a new blog entry and then follow up some action points on an earlier presentation. And it's not just focus. There's a theory that says if you go home knowing what you're going to do the next day, you'll hit the ground running in the morning because your mind has subconsciously been mulling the work over. And actually, in my personal experience, that's quite true. You now have one view of all your commitments. You no longer need to flip between task list and calendar to see what you must do. You have one view that graphically details everything on your plate and when it needs to be started. This way of looking at tasks is very visual. It's easy for you to follow, and for others too, if you want them to see your schedule. And there's a less tangible benefit too. It gives me self-confidence because I can see that what I want to do is actually achievable. I'm working to a plan rather than working blindly. It makes me feel in control of my work rather than my work being in control of me. Now, you can use this technique manually, but that has its limitations. Let's say your boss pops his head round the door. Hey, when's that website recommendation report going to be finished? I need it by Thursday, so I can crack on with allocating the work. Well, sorry, Bob, I don't really know. It's just in the middle of my long task list. And that is one of the many problems and limitations with manual or short-term scheduling. You do not know when most future work will get completed or when it should be started. You can manually schedule for a day or two, but beyond that it becomes a lot of work, especially when things change. And let's consider another problem. As we've just seen, you do not know if deadlines can be met unless, again, they're very short term. Neither do you know the impact of taking on new work will have on your existing commitments. If I help Graham with this report, will I miss some of my own deadlines? This is where an automated scheduler can help. It can process all of your tasks quickly and accurately, so you get both immediate focus and long-term planning. Right, so let's go back to our schedule and have a look to see when the website recommendations report will get finished. And I don't see it there. Let's have a look next week, and here it is. And it's actually finished a week too late, next Thursday, which brings us on to another big advantage of automated task scheduling. We just right-click, open the task, and we add a deadline. In this case, we want to finish on or before, but there are many different types of constraints you can put on tasks. And the deadline was Thursday. We reschedule. And now we see that the website recommendations report does finish Thursday. Everything else has been rescheduled around it. And we also know that we need to start the report Wednesday lunchtime, or after lunch, if we're to get it finished in time. So, in summary, auto schedulers allow you to easily take into account external factors, such as waiting on someone else to deliver something, or a deadline, or indeed both things applying to the same task, or indeed applying to a set of tasks. It's also quick and easy to adapt to changes. Another advantage is the insights reports can give you. We'll take a quick look at some aspects of task lines reporting shortly. Right, I have my schedule, job done. Well, half done. I have a schedule and now I need to stick to it. Oh, excuse me, that's my phone. Okay, that's important. I need to take this. Sorry. Hello? Okay, great. My schedule is already wrong. And now I feel stressed because I wasn't expecting that phone call and I'm already behind schedule. So this brings me on to a very important point. Scheduling yourself for every minute of every workday is not viable, and you'll inevitably fall behind schedule if you do this. There are things such as phone calls, coffee breaks, dealing with everyday emails, etc., that cannot be scheduled individually, but nevertheless consume time. Collectively, if not individually, these items are predictable. So schedule them in, build time into your schedule for these unscheduled but inevitable interruptions. So let's go into task line and have a look how I deal with that situation. So here are all the working hours that you define. This is my standard work week, and as you can see, most days I say I start work at 10:30, but actually I'm in the office around about 10 o'clock. But I reserve some time for things each morning, like making a cup of tea. I take time to look at my schedule. I think about what I need to do that day, catch up on any overnight emails, etc. So I tell Taskline I start work at 10:30 or 11, not 10 a.m. I also reduce my working day to deal with other unscheduled items. In my case, I reduce it by an hour and a half, but everyone's different. You can also set up many different working hours. For example, these are the hours if I'm working from home, as I do sometimes on a Friday morning. Okay. I also recommend that you schedule yourself some thinking time. It's to help you anticipate, plan and organise, and generally be proactive. And mark tasks off as complete, or part complete if you prefer, when you've done them, to keep the schedule up to date and to remind yourself that you're actually making progress. To do that in Taskline, I right-click and say Complete. Completed tasks are then shown in grey, which is obviously a user option. And when you reschedule, completed work is left where it is, and any uncompleted work is carried forward. So you get a record, a permanent record, if you want, of everything you've done, and nothing that you haven't done gets forgotten. It all gets carried forward. Things rarely go exactly to plan. We all know that. Sometimes, occasionally, we finish tasks early, but more often than not, we finish them late. So if you finish a task early, pat yourself on the back, but don't think that the time saved is free time. That task took less time than scheduled, but we know that others will take longer. So if we squander saved time, we'll have no contingency when extra time is inevitably needed in the future. And again, we're much more likely to fall behind under these circumstances. Finally, a common and avoidable mistake is to not update future work estimates to reflect past experience. For example, consider a 4-day task that you find yourself only halfway through after 3 of the 4 days. You're clearly behind schedule, but we tend to think optimistically, to think that somehow we'll catch up. But if the first half of the task took you 3 days, then it's nearly always reasonable to assume that the second half will also take 3 days. So update the task's duration to 6 days to reflect this. If other people are waiting for this task, then the sooner you tell them it's going to be late, the better. This gives them more time to replan. Nobody likes being let down at the last minute. So, do I intend to stick to this schedule? Well, yes and no. No, not rigidly, but yes, more or less. For me, I look at it as the things I can reasonably expect to achieve today and over the next few days, but not the exact times that I need to spend doing them. Sticking to a schedule is rewarding, but it's a balance. Being a slave to a tough schedule is not what you want. And over time, your schedule will get out of shape. That's inevitable. It might be because your time estimates were wrong, or because other unexpected work items cropped up, or a combination of both. So don't stress yourself out chasing the impossible. Review your schedule and bring it up to date. But again, how often to do that is a balance. If that's happening several times a day, then you're losing some of the benefits of time blocking and probably diverting too much time to simply driving the time blocking tool itself. So, how often will you reschedule your work? It depends. A survey of Taskline users revealed that the average was 5 times per week. But if you have a fairly stable schedule, or if you need to try and stick to a schedule agreed with somebody else, then once a week or less is sufficient. In my case, I try for every few days. After a task reschedule, If any deadlines are now missed or dates promised to others can no longer be achieved, again, tell them. The earlier you give people notice of delays, the more willing they will be to accept them, not least because it gives them more time to adjust. Of course, if you have hundreds of tasks, it can feel overwhelming, and things like deciding on individual priorities is difficult. To get around this, I just keep roughly 10 to maybe 40, it varies a lot, of my most pressing tasks in my main tasks folder, and my others in a different area I call future work. So here's my main work area, my main schedule, the things I'm working on currently. And here is all the future work. It's actually a folder where it contains 54 tasks, but I don't want to see all that. This is a task line feature where we can summarize a folder into one task. So it gives me an idea of how much is ahead of me. In this case, we can see 268 days. And I know roughly when I'm going to finish it, but that's not so important. When my future working task list gets down to about 10 tasks, I move the next batch of most important tasks from my future work folder to my working tasks folder, putting them in the exact order I intend to work on them in the process. This also gives me the opportunity to review my future work to ensure that things don't get forgotten. And periodically, when I want to see the big picture, I run taskline on both folders. Normally, I just run taskline or schedule my current work folder. But doing it on all the folders gives me a good feel for when all the work is likely to be completed. Finally, I'll finish on another advantage of automated task scheduling, reporting. Here's an example of taskline's sophisticated task schedule report. Here we see a summary report for each category of work. And here, the information on individual tasks. You can also group information in many useful ways and export to a spreadsheet for further analysis. Right, that's it from me. Thank you for watching. I hope you found at least some of this presentation useful.